welcome to Creating in Color, sharing the creative endeavors of people of color. I'm your host, Kaybe, and today I am joined with Chrystin, a visual development artist for TV animation, whose past projects include The Midnight Gospel, She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, Nico and the Sword of Light, and Harvey Girls Forever. How are you today, Chrystin?
Doing great, Kaybe. How are you?
I'm good, thanks for asking. So,
Great.
what is a visual development artist?
So, a visual development artist is someone who is responsible for all of the artwork behind the scenes. So, basically, everything that you see on screen for your favorite television shows or movies, character designs, background design or paint, props, effects, that's probably going to be touched by a visual development artist. It also depends on the production. Sometimes you'll have a production where everything's kind of parsed out. So you'll have a specific artist for a prop designer or a specific artist for a background painter, and visual development artist is just the umbrella term. And if you're given that category, you are kind of going to be expected to be able to perform all of those different tasks on the job.
How did you get started in the animation industry?
Oh man, like my first job in animation, or just my interest into animation?
Why not both?
Okay. So I've always liked drawing as a kid, but I didn't get into, or I didn't think that animation was really a viable career until I think my sophomore year in high school. I was able to take a few college courses at the Academy of Art University. And at first, I wanted to take sequential classes, but they were all filled up. So I had to take an intro to animation class. And when I took that class and realized, oh my gosh, you can make your drawings move, that's amazing. That's what I want to do from now on. So that's how I really started to take animation seriously and think, oh, this is something that I could pursue professionally. Because when you're a kid, you just like to draw and create, right? And hopefully no one's in your life that's telling you that you suck and everything you're creating is bad. I was really lucky in that sense. My parents were really encouraging, and I had a group of friends who were also super creative. So we all just sat around and we would sketch in sketchbooks all the time. And actually, now that I think of it, even though I didn't understand it as animation, when I was a kid, I really loved Sailor Moon, right? Like every other girl my age. And I really love Sailor Moon and the transformation sequences in particular. And I distinctly remember taking a bunch of computer paper, creating my own Sailor Scout OC, and then drawing like what recognize now as thumbnails, little drawings of the different frames of the transformation sequence. So I like choreographed it all and mapped it all out. And yeah, so I guess even as a little kid, I kind of had an eye for, or an interest in animation, but maybe just didn't realize that that's what I was doing. Was storyboarding, really.
I have to ask before we get more into your career, what was the name of your Sailor Moon OC?
Oh gosh, I forget. I had so many. I had so many, and I so remember like creating little bios for them. And I think one was like sugar honey stardust. They all had something to do with food and sparkles. And I think her attack was like mango surprise or something. It sounded like a fruit salad, like a fruit sundae. But I thought it was so cool. I was going to do a whole group of scouts that were all fruit themed.
So basically, you realize that you're down the line, you realize that you were doing thumbnails for essentially storyboarding.
Mm-hmm.
And you went to school for animation. Did you go for storyboarding, or did you go with the intention of just like figuring out what animation was? Or
At the time, I really wanted to focus on traditional animation, and I really loved, Ghibli films. I loved Princess and the Frog when it came out, and I think it came out like my senior year. So I was really excited because I was like, oh man, 2D animation's coming back. This is great. Who needs 3D? Because I broke all my rigs anyway. I was never good at 3D. So it's just like 2D animation all the way. I'm putting all my eggs in this basket. And that did not pan out very well because as we all know, 2D animation it still exists, but there just weren't any jobs or a lot of jobs that were hiring 2D animators. So I kind of found myself learning this craft for 4 years. And when I graduated, I kind of had to start all over again and figure something else out in order to still utilize my creative talents. Maybe not in animation, I thought at the time. Maybe I could go into comics or video games. But I still wanted to create in some sense, but it seemed like 2D animation was out, which was so sad.
So you mentioned possibly going into comics or video games. Did you actually pursue any of those interests, or were you just strictly interested in animation?
Yeah. At the time, so this was 2011, 2012. I really focused on trying to beef up my digital painting skills. And at the time, I was trying to position myself as a concept artist slash illustrator slash anybody who would hire me for any type of job, because I was working at Best Buy at the time, and I had to move back in with my parents, and I really just wanted to find any sort of career that would take me. Facebook games were big at that time, and so yeah, I was really just trying to become a better designer and painter, and hopefully somebody somewhere would pick me up. So I eventually got my first gig in comics working with Kazu Kibuishi on the Amulet graphic novel series for Scholastic. And that was so great because with Kazu and Jason Cafoe, I really learned a lot about digital painting and atmospheric perspective and really thinking of story when you're creating a piece of work. And that was in comics. So that really helped out a lot. And then I also was able to work in games for a little bit. I did some animation for Skullgirls, that indie fighting game. I don't know if you've played it.
I didn't know you did animation for Skullgirls.
Yeah. It was so much fun. It was so much fun. And it was really nice being able to utilize the skill set that I learned in college. see, it's not useless. But yeah, that was super fun, really great experience. And after I finished up on the Amulet books, I moved to North Carolina and I worked in games, but this time it was educational games. So I was working for a research company that was developing games for kids who had learning disabilities and social disorders, and that was really eye-opening. Just because I have a sister who is severely mentally delayed, and she has Cornelia de Lange syndrome, and just being able to have an opportunity to create art that was going to help other kids, maybe not exactly like her, but in that same vein, was really exciting for me. And I thought that was a very special opportunity.
That's, yeah. I feel like opportunities like that really gives your job like meaning. Like you feel, so yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, well, especially because our work, it's so collaborative and it takes so long to put out. You kind of lose focus on it. Is anyone going to enjoy this? Is anyone going to take anything on the project?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really nice knowing for sure that no matter what happens, somebody will have a takeaway. And that's not to say that people don't takeaways from other non-educational content, but sometimes, I don't know, I think this is also another reason why if you really feel touched by a piece of work, it's always nice to reach out to an artist and let them know, because otherwise we're kind of just sitting in our apartments or little studios having no idea, feeling like we're just submitting things to the void in hopes he likes it.
My last guest that I interviewed, but he wanted to go into comics and then was kind of instructed to go into animation instead because comic jobs felt so limited or exclusive to like particular studios. Did you feel any limitations like that breaking into that comic job that you did, or did you just kind of stumble upon it and they're like, yo, what's up, come on down?
Yeah, I feel every artistic field is difficult to break into, especially if you don't have a network. And that's why college, even though college is incredibly expensive, one of the big takeaways from going to an art school is you have a built-in network there. All of your fellow students are also going into the same job field as you and could help you move forward or connect you with other people in your industry later on in life. However, nowadays, especially because we have social media, that's not exclusive to going to college. So I might have to back that last statement up anyway. I'm a bigly thinking while I'm talking type of person. So, but network, I guess the takeaway is having a network is really important if you want to break into any industry. And without it, it's incredibly difficult. So when I first graduated from college, it was in the middle of a recession. A lot of studios just weren't hiring, period. So it was very difficult to, at least for the first 3 years, have like that one person that's going to be like, oh, hey, you come on down. But and I think that was another reason why when I was teaching myself how to paint digitally, I started doing daily doodles on Tumblr, because that was just a way to help create a community around myself and connect with other artists, as well as Bobby Chu had a Sketchaholic website for a while where he would have different themes where artists would have to, not have to, but they could submit a drawing, like a concept painting for a prompt. And then he would bring in an industry professional, and that person would have their interview, and they would, after the interview, look at everyone's drawings and pick a winner. And that's also a really great way of developing a community and making connections there. Because here we are, just complete strangers, all submitting to the same contest, and you're being introduced to new artists. And actually, when I first submitted to that contest, that's how I met Everett Downing. And now we're working together today. So, but that's completely off topic from what you asked earlier. I'm sorry. Back to breaking into the industry. So there was no clear answer because for several years, a year and a half, I kind of muddled around trying to figure out what I was going to do. I went to CTN when I could and showed my portfolio to a lot of artists. That helped with networking. And my first comics job came from, how did that happen? It was basically, I first met Kazu at CTN, but I didn't get called in to work on his graphic novel until I think a year later. And that was because a friend of mine was also working on his comic at the time, and he needed more background painters. And so he suggested me, and Kazu remembered me from CTN all those years ago. And my friend showed him my work. And so that's how I was called in to finally start working in comics. But I should note that after I finished up at that particular job, I don't think I started working in comics again for another year. It's not a linear journey sometimes in your art field. You're really kind of hopping around from gig to gig to gig sometimes, and what can seem like progress is only for a moment, and then it may be 6 months to a year before you even get that same opportunity again, or before you get more consistent work, especially when you're first starting out. I wish there was that dreamy, oh, here, get hired, and now you have work forever. But that didn't happen for me anyway for several years.
Do you feel the same thing happened when you were getting the video game opportunities and even animation opportunities?
Oh, absolutely. When I was working on Skullgirls, it was at the same time when I was working on Amulet, and then I haven't worked on any fighting games or indie games since then, because there's a difference between like fighting style games and research-based games. Slightly different industries. So yeah, I haven't worked on anything of that nature since then. So in that case, my video game career is very short. And then when it came to animation, I didn't get my first television animation gig until I think it was I was living in North Carolina at the time, and that's when Nico and the Sword of Light reached out for some freelance, and I finished up that gig, and then I didn't get the call to work at DreamWorks until until maybe 2 years later. So there was a big gap in between my animation gigs, and even then, there was question on whether or not I could work on a full time in house uh, television show because I hadn't in the past. I was working out of house. So there were some questions about that. And I kind of had to prove myself and make sure I was on, or maybe it was completely something that I put on upon myself. And an unnecessary pressure that I put upon myself. But I just remember having that internal stress that I would need to do the best I could, because who knows when the next opportunity would come along, because they were so few and far between for me up until that point.
That's crazy. You had a 2 year gap between
Yeah.
animation jobs. What did you do?
Well, at the time, I was freelancing, so I was working full time with my research based company. So I had a job, but then there was a point in time where I quit that job because I wanted to work in comics and I wanted to develop my own graphic novels. So I quit my full time job at the research based company and spent oh gosh, like yeah, I spent a good year developing two proposals. One proposal for a graphic novel, another was a pitch for a television show, uh, and and I had enough savings, but by the end of it, by the end of the year, both pitches were turned down, and I was out of money. so, so that wasn't the wisest decision that I made. I mean, I don't regret taking the leap, but I do kind of regret not being more savvy with my finances so that I wouldn't be broke.
Do you feel in order to be successful in this industry, you have to be an artist?
Oh, well, okay. What do you mean by successful in this industry? Do you does that mean director? Does that mean showrunner? Does that mean somebody just with steady work?
It means any position, however you
Oh,
want to
okay.
take it. Does she love these vague questions?
No, they're good because they're open ended and there's no right answer, right? I would say if you're going for a design position and you want to have a successful design career, then yes, you should be an artist. But maybe to that point, quote unquote, what is an artist, right? I've met plenty of people who have backgrounds in different fields that are completely separate from the arts, who then later decided that they were interested in art and they really wanted to pursue it. And turns out they're insanely talented. So I would say, as far as the definition of do you have to be an artist, yes, you have to have some sort of draftsman skills. You need to have a strong foundation in design, and you need to have really great time management. You need to be able to tell a story through your designs. However, do you necessarily need to go to art school? No. Do you need to have traditional classical training? No. It really all just depends on each individual's skill set and whether or not they have the discipline to follow this path in animation.
So, with that being said, do you recommend any sort of support or resources for someone who might be trying to make a career shift into designs, or maybe just someone who is still in school that maybe doesn't feel like they're getting the kind of training or skills that they need?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different online resources that artists can look up. Bobby Chu's Schoolism is amazing, it has great accessible tutorials and lectures and classes for all types of students who want to be concept artists. I would also check out your favorite artists that are currently working in the industry, because more often than not, they will have either an online tutorial that you could look at, sometimes for free, or they might be offering a class with like Concept Design Academy. That's a really great resource. When I was first starting out and teaching myself digital painting, I looked at Imagine FX tutorials. They had a magazine and also online YouTube videos. Those were incredibly helpful to me. Also, I would try to either purchase or rent art of books. There's a lot that you can learn just by looking at other artists' concepts and doing studies. And by studies, I mean not something that you would want to put in your own portfolio, because if you're doing a master copy, you're copying someone's work. Essentially, what you're trying to do is break down their design process and or shape language or aesthetic. And hopefully by learning from the best, you will eventually be able to incorporate their techniques into your own style to make it something unique and different, because every artist has their own specific influences. And what really is going to make you stand out is, instead of trying to mimic other artists point by point, is you can take a little something from everyone and also something from yourself. What's interesting to you? What is your point of view as an artist? And when you merge all of that together, that's what creates your unique style. And that's what's going to set you apart as far as portfolios go in recruiting.
And speaking of portfolios, how many pieces would you recommend for someone to have into theirs, and what kind of options should people showcase within their portfolios?
There's no magic number. That's just the hard truth. As far as the proper amount of pages you should have in your portfolio, I think when I was coming up, people were saying 15 to 20 max. Really, the number of pages doesn't matter. It's the quality of the content that you have in there. So I would really just encourage students and other artists that are trying to break into the field to really try to look at their work and scrutinize which are their best pieces, what's the best of the best, and also which pieces are the most applicable to the job that you're applying for. Because I've looked at several portfolios who the artist will tell me, oh, I really want to break into background design and prop design. And then I'll look at their portfolio and it's all characters, no props or backgrounds. So really try to look at your work. And also a big, and I made this mistake too when I was first starting out. If you are doing a lot of illustrative pieces and you want to showcase your design skills, it's great to show the big, pretty paintings. However, if you are trying to break into design, we really need to see the deconstruction of those. So if you're painting a giant chapel, then sure, showcase that painting, because that also illuminates your amazing rendering skills. But it would be a stronger piece if you showed the line art of the chapel, and if you maybe had an orthographic view so we could see inside. Once we're inside, what are the props that we can find in the chapel, and not just turning a candlestick in space. Take a more complex piece and maybe turn that, show it in different states, what it looks like. Say you take a statue, right? It doesn't have to be a statue. I'm like, what do you find in chapels? Oh, my mom's gonna be mad. Say you take a chapel, right? Or not a chapel, but a bench, a pew, whatever. you you take that and you've turned it in space. What if you showed it in different states? What does the pew look like when it's whole? What does it look like when it's been crushed by a giant mallet, right? There's going to be splinters and it's going to be broken everywhere. So showing these designs in different states also illustrates, no pun intended, that that you have a handle not only on design, right, but you also have a handle on storytelling because you're thinking about how your design impacts the story and emphasizes certain character traits, moods, everything that you're creating, even if you aren't the director, right, is enhancing the story that's already in place. So even though you yourself aren't in charge of what the plot is, you are enhancing the plot through your designs. So I always try to tell students, really think of the story that you're telling rather than what's the coolest piece that I can create. Think of the story that you're trying to tell, create a world. And if I, as a portfolio reviewer, am looking at your work and I can't tell what kind of story that you're trying to tell, then some edits need to be made.
I feel like I mentioned her before also, but another guest that I had on the show who was an
Mm-hmm.
animatic editor, she mentioned also keeping in mind of the story when you go through these processes. And it's just interesting for you as a visual development artist even try to hammer in the fact that you need to keep in mind of the story. Because like I also had a writer and a storyboard artist who obviously like, yeah, the story, but a visual development artist too. Do you feel like that like is so easily forgotten?
I think it can be when you're not on a show. So if you're an independent artist trying to break into the animation industry, you're not creating a pitch, right? So you're kind of focused on how can I prove that I can do the job? How can I prove that I'm an excellent draftsman and I have a great sense of shape language and color theory and blah 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 blah. So I think it's just a matter of what am I looking for? Your focus tends to be on proving that you have the skill set, and some people tend to forget about the story, and it just enhances your work so much when you think of, oh well, it's a bedroom of a kid. Okay, well, what kind of kid lives here? There are so many different type of children out there. Are they going through a punk phase? Are they really into My Little Pony but are trying to hide it, because they don't want anyone to know? That room looks really different. Are there's no just, oh, standard kids room. Everyone has a different personality, and the way that we as humans, one of the ways is we as human beings like to differentiate ourselves from other people is by decorating. So when you start thinking about that and you apply that across the board, going back to portfolios, I really want to showcase that I have a really great sense of scale and composition. So I'm going to do this really beautiful landscape. Okay, well, what kind of landscape? Is it in a fantasy setting? Is it in a Western setting? Is it a Western fantasy? All of those are gonna look different. And you also think of, okay, well, what's the mood of the type of story that I'm telling? Is this a Western fantasy that's meant for preschoolers? Or is this something that's meant for an older audience? Those are going to have two completely different approaches as far as design goes. And also, when you start thinking about story, this can also open you up to showcasing how flexible you are as an artist. Because if you can showcase two, I like to tell some artists this, like, if you can show in your portfolio two completely different stories, whether it be mood, age group, those designs are going to be completely different. And that's going to open you up to more jobs in the long run, because now it's like, okay, well, clearly this artist isn't locked into one style. They can potentially do anything that we throw at them. So let's give them a test. So the more you think of story and the more specific you make your stories, you're only going to help yourself in the long run and help recruiters realize that they can, because that's what happens when you get hired on to a show, you have to be able to demonstrate that you understand the mood and the story that your art director is conveying to you or the showrunner is conveying to you, right? So that is going to be your whole job. And it's something I had to learn on the fly when I was not just in animation but in comics as well. I think in comics is when I really learned it because my whole job was painting backgrounds. So I really had to think of even if it is just a secondary, tertiary character that no one cares about, they still have a home. They still have a home that they live in. So you kind of on the fly have to brainstorm and develop that world and really make it feel like a fully fleshed out character, even if that scene is only going to be for a couple of frames or a couple of seconds on screen. So yeah, so story, even if you're not a board artist or an animator, is your job. So you really need to pay attention to it.
I'm curious. Have you ever considered being an illustrator at all? Because I have some of your illustrations. Like, surprise, I have one hanging up in my house, my apartment. I don't have a house. But would
Same.
would you ever consider doing like children's book illustrations or anything like that?
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, I haven't gotten commissioned to do a lot of illustrations professionally. When I was first starting out, I got to do a couple of illustrations, but never for a full on children's book. That would be awesome.
Do you feel like there's a big difference between being a visual development artist and being an illustrator?
I don't think it's so huge because a lot of the skill sets overlap, and a lot of biz dev artists work in children's books. So I think being able to pivot from one to the other isn't so crazy. But a children's book illustrator, I think it comes with its own unique set of, I guess it's not skills. What's the word I'm looking for? It it's different but the same. Because you're still thinking of story, you're still thinking of mood and tone and shape language and all of that, but also I think because you're combining all of it into one frame, whereas viz dev, it's kind of you're parsing out your skill sets to different disciplines because it's an animated moving medium. So when you're creating an illustration, you really have to put emphasis and focus on what is the most storytelling I can do on one frame. So I think it's just a different mind shift that you have to make. But then again, I don't have a huge background in children's illustration, so don't take my word for it.
So, what does your daily routine look like?
Oh man, right now it's I wake up in the morning, set my alarm on snooze maybe 5 times,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll finally get out of bed. I'll make a quick breakfast. I'm trying to get better at waking up earlier because I don't know, I want to be maybe not like, have you seen those CEO articles that are like, oh yeah, like these super famous CEOs like wake up at 4:30 in the morning and live their best lives, and that's why they're so successful. I don't want to do that, but but I would like to get into the habit of waking up earlier and maybe enjoying my cup of coffee, and especially now that we're working home, I don't know, working from home, watch an episode or part of an episode of television, or just not rewind, unwind in some other way before starting the day. I think that sounds really idyllic and cool, but that's not what I do now. Yeah, so I roll out of bed, I grab a coffee, piece of toast, put some jam on it, and I get to work around 12 or 1. I'll take a lunch break, and that's when I'll watch maybe an episode of Queer Eye, because that's out right now, or something else. I think Dating Around just came out, so maybe that'll be my next The next space. I don't know. It's a boring schedule because we're inside. It's just I'm trying to jazz it up to make it sound less sad, but but really I wake up, I go to work, and then at night I play Animal Crossing and go to bed. That's my day. That's you wanted the truth, Katie. My life is boring and uneventful.
I mean, you have Animal Crossing. I can't even get that.
No, really?
Yeah, Switches have been out of stock for so long.
Oh, tragic.
I,
Yeah.
I know. I still have New Leaf though, which is nice. What are some specific roadblocks to watch out for as a visual development artist?
Um, I would say scheduling. So it's really important to develop a trusting relationship between yourself and your art director and your line producer. So if you are handed tasks that you know are going to take you longer for whatever reason, maybe the set itself is just crazy ridiculous and it's the Beast Library and you got to do all those damn books. That's going to take longer than another scene, right? So just be honest with your art director and you could take them aside and just be like, look, I'm a little nervous about this. The deadline that we have feels a little tight. Is there any way that we could work with it? And more often than not, they will talk it through with you and you can come to some sort of compromise where that will work out. Maybe they can help put another artist on the task so both of you could tackle it at the same time, or depending on the amount of work that you're assigned all at once, maybe they could take some of the smaller pieces away and delegate that to another artist. So at the end of the day, you really just you don't want to get caught in a cycle of taking on accepting more work than you know that you can handle. If you're fast and it's no problem, fine. But if you know that you can't handle it, if you accept the work anyway and you wind up stressing yourself out, that's a problem. Also, if you need to do overtime, like this directly leads into it. If the work is going to take you longer and it doesn't fit in this schedule, ask for overtime and don't be ashamed of asking for overtime. The worst disservice you can do to yourself is putting yourself in a position where you are working overtime and not getting paid. That is a no-no. Love yourself more. Don't get caught in that trap. Because also it just creates a perpetual cycle of companies expecting that level of rotation from their artists. If every artist starts doing that and not accurately detailing the amount of hours that they're working, then burnout is going to happen a lot quicker, and that's only going to hurt the production as a whole moving forward. So yeah, just communication and being honest with yourself and the amount of workload that you're getting are definitely two big traps to look out for, two big pitfalls.
That's very good advice. What type of programs do you use?
Mostly Photoshop,
Oh, okay.
which is all actually. Yeah. When I was first starting out in animation, I used Flash, and nobody uses that anymore. I played around a little bit with Toon Boom, and I love it so much. If I ever worked in animation as an animator again, that would be really exciting for me because building puppets in Toon Boom is so much fun.
I haven't gotten a chance to build puppets in Toon Boom. I've done it in Flash. How
Mm-hmm.
different is it?
Um, there are just more options in Toon Boom, and it's it's more flexible because, and again, I'm not a master puppet maker, so I can't give you all the ins and outs of it. But when I was playing around with it, it just seemed more intuitive for animators, and all the nodes and stuff that you could hook up, it just made you be able to flesh out your puppet more, and it didn't feel like I had to worry so much about my files crashing.
That's a nice
And
feeling.
yeah, yeah. And the different, I think textured brushes were nice as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big game changer for me.
Because the flash brushes are trash. So bad.
They did their best with what they
Yeah,
had.
they did.
The Nintendo 64 of our time.
What was your upbringing like?
My upbringing. Yeah, I was just a weird kid. I really loved anime and costumes and theater, and all of that isn't so crazy nowadays. Like that nerd culture is very much mainstream now. I think when I was coming up, it was still on the cusp of that. So you could definitely find more kids who were open to that, but there weren't as many as there are nowadays that are completely open with it, right? So so there was just a point in time, I think when I was moving over into high school, that I realized, oh, I don't have to worry about what other people think of me. I can do whatever I want as long as it's not hurting anyone else. So I kind of just like I had this weird epiphany. It may or may not have been inspired by Paradise Kiss because I just love the idea of all these cool kids going to fashion school. And I was like, I'm gonna dress crazy too, and that's gonna be super fun. so so by the time I went to high school, I just started experimenting with fashion more. I went through a wig phase. I wore wigs all the time. And they weren't even like the good wigs that people have nowadays with like the human hair and the lace fronts. Like I was wearing cheap Party City $20, $10 wigs in bright like orange, neon orange, and periwinkle blue, and they just look so cheap. But you could not tell me that I wasn't cool. And I was just lucky enough because I had a bunch of friends who were equally as just like weird and down for anything. And so I think it was every Wednesday. Oh, I think how it really started was we had spirit days at our schools, and my friends and I were just talking about, oh man, I wish spirit day were every day. And we were just like, why don't we do that? And so we decided every Wednesday we would do a different spirit day of our own making, just my small group of friends and I. So, so we would come to school dressed as clowns, dressed as goths, dressed as, we tried to, because I think like Harajuku was really big back then. So we were trying to do like fruits fashion, but on a really limited budget. And then somewhere along the line, I was like, wow, I wish I could do our weird Wednesday thing every week, and or not every week, but every day. And so by the time I was a senior, I was just dressing weird and however I wanted to every single day. There was no genre that I was married to. I did everything. But you know what? It was super fun, and I don't regret it at all. I do it again.
Did anyone give you like side eye or anything?
Oh yeah. The bullying, I was lucky. I was very lucky. The bullying wasn't that extreme. I think nobody like threw anything at us, but I had some kids like follow me from class to class, and that was really scary. And then some kids would just, say things as I would pass by, but whatever. Got in trouble with a I think it was a teacher. Yeah, she got mad at me because I was wearing I had these shorts, and then I was wearing fishnets underneath with like socks on top. And I thought I looked so cool, but she was mad and said I looked like a hooker and was saying that the shorts were too short.
Mm.
So I got in trouble with that. Yeah, but nothing like too extreme that made me want to stop doing what I was doing. I think the other kids at school were just like, yeah, they're just going to be weird. So, and that's the thing too. Like when you push it to, and not to say it was so extreme, but it was almost like we were all aware that what we were doing was outside the norm. So anything that kids would want to say to us to make us feel bad didn't matter. Because you could look at me and go, oh, you look terrible. Oh, you know, what's with the wig or whatever? Like, you're just a weirdo. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, I am. And so, so I think after a while they just gave up and we could do whatever we want. It was awesome.
So, how would you describe your fashion now?
Pajama life because we're inside all the time. No, before the lockdown, I was really into 60s and 70s vintage clothing and fashion. That was really fun, or 70s inspired. Not all my clothes are vintage. That was a dream that I abandoned long ago. But yeah, I would say my style is still pretty eclectic, but I tend to lean towards 50s through 70s fashion. And that was probably because I also got really into swing dancing for a while, and I really wanted to have like that 50s aesthetic. So now I have a bunch of like dresses that I never wear anymore. And maybe I'll get back into it because the silhouette is really pretty, and the community is bigger than ever now. And yeah, I don't know. There's just something about studying other decades of fashion and replicating it that's really interesting to me. Maybe that also can go back to story because fashion is always a response to what is happening at that time. So you think of the 60s and you had the civil rights movement going on and the rise of Black power and Black love and Black acceptance, right? And that's where the Afro came from. And you also think of like all of the bright colors from the 60s, right? This is like late 60s or mid to late 60s. And it's kind of a response in the short dresses that people were wearing, right? Because it's a response to the 50s, which was very wholesome and two kids and a dog, nuclear family, and the 60s is all about rebellion and breaking free from old cultural norms. And you got free love, and they were also dealing with like the Vietnam War that was going on. So you saw a lot of radical changes. And also the really great thing about like the 60s in general is throughout that decade, there have been so many different trends of fashion that when you look at the start of the 60s and the end of the 60s, it's almost unrecognizable. There's so many different ideas that were coming across and being reflected in clothing during that time. Yeah, there's a really great YouTuber, and it's this it's this elder British woman, and she really does a really great job of breaking down fashion by the decade and what political things were happening during that time or cultural things that were happening during that time that influenced the fashion of that age and influenced the ideals of beauty during that age. And it's really, really fascinating. Okay, it's called The Ultimate Fashion History. It's great, and she loves her job and everything that she does. Like, she's just so excited to talk about fashion. I love it. So, highly recommend.
Outside of work, what kind of hobbies, side hustles, or interests do you engage in?
Ooh, this is a really great question because it's something I'm trying to work on. I definitely am a self-proclaimed workaholic. I pray to the hustle culture, and that's probably not the healthiest thing in the long run for an artist. So I've really been trying to set aside time for me. And lately that has been running. I really enjoy going on runs. Earlier this year, I completed my first half marathon. So I was really happy about that.
Congrats!
Thank you. Thank you. I want to go and do a full marathon one of these days. But yeah, since the lockdown has happened, who knows when it'll be safe to go out again. But I am looking forward to it because I think that's a cool goal. And running has always helped me clear my head, and getting exercise is great because I'm not stuck at my desk all day. The only downside is I I would like to find a running group. For a long time, I was running by myself. Like I had a group earlier, but then we kind of fell apart. Uh, and I need to find more long distance runners because running by yourself, I ran the half marathon by myself, and it was just so sad. Like running like 13 plus miles, you're just like by yourself and you don't really know anybody. Yeah, so I think if I was a part of a running group, that would be a lot more fun.
What do you feel are your biggest influences?
Oh, wow. Yeah. My biggest influences, I of course love Miyazaki and Ghibli films. So beautiful, looking at their art of books, looking at, oh, there's some, I forget what the technical term for it, but it's basically like a storyboard Bible, I guess the best way to describe it. But it's this big fat book, and you look inside, and it's all the boards from the film. That's fascinating to look through, especially the Ponyo one because it's all watercolor and it's beautiful and it makes me want to cry. I love that. I love European comics, Alessandro Barbucci, Enrique Fernandez. Their works are really beautiful and definitely taught me a lot about tone and being able to manipulate your color scheme in order to convey a certain mood and just to be more free with color. So they're really inspiring to me in that way. And also their character designs are killer. I also enjoy Leica films, especially Coraline. That's really beautiful. Corpse Bride was a huge influence on me when I was a kid, aka college student. um, Not so much because of the character design, even though the character design is beautiful, but when Corpse Bride came out, I think that was when I started going to school for animation. So I really just enjoyed looking at the behind the scene features that were showing all of the test walk cycles for the different puppets.
Mhm.
That was really fascinating to me.
Okay, now is the time for rapid questions.
Okay, let's do it. So it's just yes or no?
Yes or no, this or that. And sometimes, since apparently I'm a liar, I'll just ask you a question and you give me an answer.
Okay, sure.
Perfect. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Okay, that was the first question.
Yes. Nailed it.
Do you get scared when the lights go off in your house?
No.
What if they randomly turn on and there's no one else in the house?
Okay, if they randomly turn on, yeah, that's scary. That's horror movie 101. I would ask.
List your three favorite colors.
Ooh, pink, orange, green. Done.
Nice. What type of pink?
Like powder baby. Well, no, that's not true. I really love millennial pink, but I also love like bright, hot, aggressive pink because it just screams, punch me in the face. I don't know. I think it maybe it goes back to like Powerpuff Girl energy, like aggressive femme energy. Like clearly, that's my personal my personal relationship with it. But pink is for everyone. But yeah, and also maybe it also comes from when I was a kid. I could never have the pink thing. Whenever it was with my friends and I in elementary school, there was always some other kid who would take like the Pink Ranger from Power Rangers, or if we had a choice between pink or purple, pink would always be snapped up first and I would get stuck with the purple. So I think hot pink is awesome because it's just like aggressive pink making up for lost time pink. We're here and we love pink, and I don't care if anyone else doesn't think it's cool. I love it.
Damn, that was an answer for rapid questions.
Sorry.
Do you have any pets?
No, I just have plants.
What are their names?
Okay, confession time. I make an attempt every once in a while to name all my plants, but I don't. But I forget what they are. So I wind up just calling a lot of them Susan or Lucinda.
What?
I'm a terrible plant mom.
Would you want any pets or you go with just plants?
Yeah, every once in a while I think, oh, I'll get like I'm a dog person, but the place I'm in right now only allows cats. So every once in a while I think, oh yeah, I could be a cat person. Sure, that could be my life. But a lot of the plants that I have apparently are really poisonous and dangerous for cats. So I don't want to get rid of my plant babies.
Sounds like a dilemma.
Yeah, yeah.
What did you do for your last birthday?
Last birthday, I was in quarantine. So I played Animal Crossing and but it was really sweet because one of my friends made one of his rooms in his house Sailor Moon themed. And he got like the QR code, so he put up all these little mannequins with all the different scouts, and then we could go behind and take pictures like a photo booth, like we were in the Sailor Scout outfits. So it was super cute. So we just had a little like Animal Crossing birthday party. It was adorable.
That's really cute. Give me a number between 1 and 62.
13.
Give me a word that starts with the letter Y. Rapid question. Rapid question.
Oh, these are rapid questions. Okay. You no, that's a you. I was gonna say ukulele. With something that starts with a Y. Yo-yo.
Too easy. Give me another one.
Yoruba.
Okay. What is sunshine?
Sunshine.
Yeah, what's sunshine?
Light from the sun. I always think of Remember the Titans, and there was that one player that everyone called Sunshine because he came from California. That's not answering your question at all.
Nope. That's a perfect answer to my question.
Okay.
Do you believe in Santa Claus?
No, my parents told me Santa Claus died. True story.
Like when you were a little kid, they said that?
I was like on the cusp of being old enough to know the truth. And yeah, I went to my mom and I asked her, yeah, like is Santa Claus real? And she took me aside and she was like, Chrystin, he was real a very long time ago, but passed away. And in hindsight, I don't know which was worse.
You are very consistent in giving me very interesting answers.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad. I'm glad it's not a boring interview.
Do you believe in miracles?
I guess. I honestly just haven't thought about miracles in a long time. And I don't think you know what? I'll be optimistic about it. I'll try to be positive. Yes, I believe in miracles. However, I have yet to see one.
Good answer. Lastly, do you believe in yourself?
Oh my God, yes. Believe in me who believes in you.
Thank you so much, Chrystin, for speaking with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Aw, thank you for having me.
Do you have any social media you'd like to share?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Chrystin Garland on Twitter, and I'm Lady Garland on Instagram and practically every other platform.
Perfect. And thank you, the listener, for tuning in. Please follow Creating in Color on Instagram and Twitter, and feel free to submit any questions for upcoming guests through our social media or through email at creatingincolorcast@gmail.com. If you're interested in following me, you can find me on Instagram and YouTube at Maybe It's Kaybe. Thanks to Namikaze for allowing us the use of his song. That was my chair, I didn't fart. You can find more of his music on his SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/Namikaze. Namikaze. Since Creating in Color is a new podcast, we appreciate any word of mouth or even helping push our hashtag on social media, Creating in Color Cast. Before we wrap up, do you have any departing words of wisdom for everyone listening?
Yeah, I would just say keep working towards your goals, keep pushing forward. The art and animation industry, like I guess any creative field in general, you're going to hear a lot of no's. It can be really disheartening sometimes, but it only takes one yes. So keep expanding upon your skills and pushing forward, making connections, and I'm going to get real sappy right now, but whenever I'm feeling down, I really love to listen to Lena Horne in The Wiz sing If You Believe. It makes me cry every fucking time. It's beautiful. So that's my little rec for cheering yourself up and keep pushing forward, because the world needs more creators and their voices. Creators of color specifically, don't ever give up on telling your stories. I love you.
Thank you so much. This has been Creating in Color. Keep striving, keep trying, and keep creating. Bye.
Blah.